I go back to when I was in high school and I did humanitarian work in West Virginia. And the pastor said, when I got there, he pulled me to this aside and he said, if somebody calls you a nigger, don't worry. Because they've never seen black people except on TV. So just don't take offense. And I remember thinking, well, what am I supposed to do with this information at 16?
16.
And how are you not my ally
to
help educate them not to say that?
Yeah. I'm Geremy Dixon, and you're listening to The Misfit Manifesto. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us for our incredible Misfit Manifesto podcast. So on today's episode, I sit down with newly minted Congresswoman Sydney Kamlager. Sydney has spent her career prioritizing equity and access for Californians, specifically Angelenos, and we talk about the ever-changing landscape of politics in America, how government is and needs to evolve, and how Americans can adopt new governance and protocols. So I'm so grateful to have Sydney with us today, and I don't even know how to communicate. This is a huge honor. How many people can say that for their first episode of their podcast, they're sitting with a American Congresswoman? This is huge.
This is big. Well, who can say with their first podcast, they're sitting with the great Geremy Dixon?
I will take that all day long. I appreciate you.
You better.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. First of all, so you're like new to Congress, not new to advocacy, not new to government, but new to Congress. And so how does that feel?
So thank you for this. I love being in this chair for the inaugural. It's overwhelming. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah.
You know, you see these people on TV, you read about them in the history books. Sometimes you see them go to jail. And then and then you get into this position where you're sitting on the floor of the House of, the House of Representatives for the United States, where presidents have gone.
Yeah.
And you think, wow. There are less than 12,000 people who've held this position. I think there are less than 100 black people who have. So it's humbling.
That's incredible. All right, so we're going to get into a whole lot of stuff today, but I want to ease into it.
Okay.
So here's $1 million question.
Okay.
I know you've been waiting for this question because no one's asked you this question.
Okay.
In Hollywood, from a film perspective, what is your favorite film that depicts government? Follow up, and why did you choose Eddie Murphy's Distinguished Gentleman? Go.
So I thought the question was going to be, what's my sign? I was going to say, I'm a Cancer.
Okay.
That's the most important. No.
That's the most important thing.
Wow. Okay. Movies.
Yep.
Film. I'm a romantic, I think, at heart.
Okay.
Even though I portray a cynic in real life.
Do you?
But I like, Veep, which is TV, I think was hilarious because it really is more like that.
Okay.
West Wing is very aspirational. You're hoping people think that. House of Cards, I feel like I'm living that now.
That's more reality.
You know what I mean? I'm like, I don't want to see any dead bodies.
Right.
The American president was just kind of nice because you got to see a personal side in the film, obviously, to people who live this and, the importance of being in relationships and finding love, right? And connecting.
Yeah.
And then the Distinguished Gentleman, oddly enough.
Come on, let's go.
Hello.
Let's go.
It's very relatable.
It's wonderful.
It's a funny story. That movie was about, Eddie Murphy's character basically used the name of a dead guy and ran, to win. So in this last election in Pittsburgh, there was a person who was retiring who was a Democrat, whose name I think was Tim Doyle. The Republicans found someone with the exact same name.
Get out of here.
Yes. Tim Doyle to run. To confuse voters. I mean, I was like, this was taken right out of the movie.
It was in the movie. So there's something to that. Now, what about, have you seen Wag the Dog?
I have seen Wag the Dog.
What are your thoughts about that?
Very true, too.
Isn't that interesting?
How do you create scenarios to distract the American people from what's really going on so that you can pivot into this crazy land space? We've seen that in a number of different scenarios. I feel like we're doing that right now with this George Santos guy. I mean, who is he really? But instead of talking about him, they're creating, the debt ceiling is real, but they're creating all of these other issues. Communist China, the people are going to kill us. Democrats are demons. I mean, that came up on the floor. And so that we're not talking about some of these other things that are really also, I think, important to the American people. So there's a lot of that.
Yeah.
Let's pivot and talk about this so we don't have to talk about this.
Weapons of mass destruction.
Trump did that a lot. And he kind of used the issue. He dug into the issue to distract you from the issue, right? And then he pivoted and made the issue about someone else when it was really about him. So there's I think, a finesse to how people manipulate truth.
Yeah.
But it's also a problem with government because that's what I think a lot of people think about that.
So your childhood, actress, activist, artist, social work, these are your parents.
Yeah, these are my parents.
This is there's this huge, wide world that you kind of grow up in. It seems very vibrant. What was childhood like for you?
Childhood was going to picket lines before I even knew what it meant to be in a union. It was going to jazz clubs way past my bedtime. It was, meeting people like Art Blakey and Dizzy Gillespie. It was hanging out backstage in the theater when my mother didn't have childcare and falling asleep between the rows, learning how to play chess with, Paul Benjamin, who was in a number of Spike Lee movies. Childhood was getting on the A train after school to go to my mom's job. She worked at the Studio Museum in Harlem when she had to work late by myself. I was a latchkey kid. Childhood was going to rent parties for other actors and dancers so that they, could raise money to pay the rent. We lived in Brooklyn at the time.
So for a minute, just some people may have missed what a rent party is. So for our audience, just unpack rent party just a little bit for us.
Okay, for your highfalutin listeners.
There you go. So all the rich folks, all the rich people.
A rent party is when you cannot pay the rent.
Okay.
And so you ask your friends and their friends to show up and donate at the door for a party at your house. And then you come and you give your little $3, $4, $5, $10. And then hopefully enough people show up so that you make the rent.
Sounds like church. That's what in an interview or an article I read, you mentioned being raised to be unapologetically Black, vocal, and empathetic. I love you chose those three. Yeah. Unapologetically Black, but vocal and empathetic. Tell me, what do you mean? Like, in what ways?
Well, born of a product of an interracial marriage. My dad is white, my mom is Black, so they had lots of struggles. Okay. Denied housing because they were interracial. I had to fight the city. The landlord was saying all kind of crazy names to them, and then, was peeking through the window to see what I was going to look like when I was born. I don't know. Interracial child have 3 heads. What's this going to look like? But so I grew up with a mother whose best friend was a Black Panther, a father who walked through Cabrini Green to make sure folks were enrolled to get services. I would go to visit his family in Canton, and I was the only Black person in the town.
The only?
The only. So vocal, learning to not be afraid of your own skin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And to say what you see.
Yeah.
Empathetic, to realize that other people don't have the same lens that you have.
Sure.
And before you judge them, how do we find a common space where we're either seeing a similar thing or we understand what the differences are.
Yeah. My imagination says that your upbringing and then experiencing those type of things may be a reason you have such a passion for like interracial dynamics and really helping to serve to be a bridge builder. When you look at the work you do now, how much of that is tied to your experiences, and how often do you reflect on your upbringing when you're trying to build coalition around those in our community, Angelenos, and really Californians now?
Yeah. Every single day. I mean, LA is incredibly diverse. How many dialects are spoken in LA Unified?
Yeah.
You know, how many restaurants can you go to that serve all different kinds of foods? And then how much tension is there here? I mean, let's be honest. And I use my upbringing every single day. I think, how could these two people who were so unconventional get together, you know, to have meet? They were separated very early on, got divorced. They do not work well together, but now they do.
They're better as friends?
Yes.
Got it.
But there was a reason the universe brought them together. A woman incredibly Black, and then a man incredibly empathic to everyone else. And so I think about them coming together. I think about, you know, being the lightest Black-skinned person in a school, or going to Canton where no one else looked like me, and working in the general store and having people just respond to me as a young girl, not saying you're Black. Or I go back to when I was in high school and I did humanitarian work in West Virginia in the Appalachian Mountains. And we had to clean the house of this family, poor white trash, like I've never seen poverty like this, Geremy.
Really?
And the house stunk to high heaven, feces and urine soaked in the bed, clothes everywhere. There were like 4 kids, and 3 of the kids, the daughter had 4 kids. 3 of them were, she birthed from her uncle who was living across from the house in an RV. So incest up the wazoo.
Yeah.
And the pastor said, when I got there, he pulled me to this aside and he said, if somebody calls you a nigger, don't worry, because they've never seen Black people except on TV. So just don't take offense. And I remember thinking, well, what am I supposed to do with this information at 16?
16.
And how are you not my ally
to
help educate them not to say that?
Yeah.
So I was defensive, on my guard. I mean, I was like, you know, there are 2 Black kids doing this trip. And I thought, well, so if they call us this, are these white kids going to stick up for us? We clean this house. I meet this little toddler baby. And I thought, he was looking at me strange. And I thought, well, here it comes.
Right.
And then he just grabbed my hand and my hair, and he wouldn't let go. And they said, well, you got to, you know, so that you can clean.
Yeah.
And he just clung to me the entire time. Now, if I hadn't had the upbringing I think that I had, I would have responded to that child differently, and it might not have gone the way it went.
Sure.
You don't lead with race, you lead with relationships and heart.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean you're not colorblind.
Right.
I'm certainly not.
Right.
But that was a moment because this child was innocent and responded to me in a way that someone would without bias and prejudice, who hadn't been taught how to treat someone that didn't look like them.
Yeah.
It was evident this white baby was curious about my skin color and my hair, but how it unfolded reminded me that, you know, God is present.
Sure.
And wants the best from us if we're open to that.
Yeah.
And so I use that in how I work. You know, you meet
amazing.
people that don't like you, that don't support your views, maybe that didn't vote for you, that don't speak the language. So how do you figure out a way to still some of that so that I can connect to you, Geremy,
Yeah.
Dixon,
Yeah. Yeah.
your spirit?
Right.
that will inform me how to work with you
Yep.
more than the title, the race, the age.
Which goes back to what you mentioned about empathy. Like you were grown in an environment that leaned into empathy, and that's so necessary. The capacity to hold space for the other, at least, though can be a detrimental term, but the consciousness of difference does not mean the narrative needs to be disagreement, right? Or conflict. And so having empathy, I think, is a huge aspect. All right, let's talk about conflict a little bit.
Okay.
I was watching C-SPAN like it was, I'm talking about, like I was binge watching on Netflix.
It was like Bravo.
Oh, my Lord.
I know.
I couldn't turn away. It was like a car crash.
know.
You don't want to look, but you got to look. And I kept looking. And so, with all this new technology, you can like watch TV at home and it's on your devices. And every once in a while, especially when there was like the little terse exchange, the camera passed by you.
Yes.
So I saw you. I think I may have texted you when that happened.
Yes.
So this whole thing happens and the whole world is watching. In this moment, C-SPAN did what is not often done. Right? Not allowed to be done. We were able to see so much more. And I think what I've heard, and I don't know if you've heard this, a lot of questions came up about just the antiquated way, aside from the conflict, just the methodology, and it begs some larger questions about how business gets done in government. So you represent someone who has huge depth of field because of your work before Congress, but also someone who is new to this space. So you're innovative. Is government efficient? And if it's not, what do you think about ways in which we can help to turn that?
Good Lord. So
how much time do I have, right?
I know. This is a therapy session. You go there. It's the first day. We're going there to get sworn in.
Right.
Everyone's excited you have your family members.
Your family's there. Everyone's there. Right.
Right. People taking days off from work to fly here to see nonsense.
Yeah.
So you're there and you're like, let's be really deferential to this house and moment. And then you're like, this is a circus. And you realize, thank goodness, in that moment in time, because we had not elected a speaker, we had not voted on a rules package, which determines how the House is governed, the TV had the run of the House. So that was like a moment where you could see unfettered access that you would never see again. And you see, there's some tradition to how things go. You stand up and do a roll call. Now, that's only for when you're doing a speaker vote. When we go to vote, we actually have a little credit card that we put in a little credit card machine.
Got it.
And then you vote.
Got it.
And it's yellow, red, or green.
Okay.
But for this, which is supposed to be ceremonial, it's very traditional and chaotic in that moment. But I'm learning how slow government is. I mean, for the longest time, they didn't even have a woman's bathroom on the floor because women weren't really, in Congress.
Really? Do you happen to know when that changed?
So I don't, but it was not that long ago.
Wow.
There's etiquette. You can't wear a jacket. You can't wear, certain shoes. For a while, you could only wear pantyhose. There are steps. Some of it is to make sure that we are doing our checks and balances and not basically spending the taxpayers' dollars to do crazy stuff.
Sure.
But some of it is, this is how it's always been done.
Yeah.
So if you've always sent a nonprofit organization a check in the mail, and then now here we have direct deposit, government, you could move to direct deposit so the people doing the work can get the check a little sooner.
That's right.
I mean, that's a real example of how the state still operates.
Got you.
So it also happens in that way with the federal government.
This is concerning because here's my sense is that when the world evolves and a system in it doesn't, it typically means that what is being done, it takes more time and is more expensive. Right? Because typically evolutions are for efficiency. So if you're saying, as an agency, our government, we're not gonna evolve then that means it probably is costing us more money to do this, taking more time, and reducing the efficiency of getting whatever we want to get done. Do you feel like, aside from, and I'm going to get into some things you talk about relative to your focus, but aside from that, how do you see yourself in begging some of the larger questions about making government more efficient for the people?
Yeah. So there used to be a time where the only way you communicated with your constituents was you put something in the mail,
Right.
or you send them something in the mail and then they show up to an event. Social media and technology has allowed us to circumvent that.
Yeah.
So that's really useful. And I actually do use it to talk to people about what's going on. I mean, when I first got there, I did an Instagram on, how we don't have access to our money. We don't have keys to the office. Until I'm sworn in, I can't even open the door for a constituent to come in. I mean, I got staff working remotely.
Wow.
You can't buy stamps. You can't. We have to rent the telephone. Okay, Geremy? They're like, hey, you want all this office furniture? You have to rent the phone. What kind of phone do you want? So you can't even get that set up.
Okay.
That's antiquated.
Yeah.
And I don't think the people know that. I mean, there's all this talk about how much you get paid, which is not a lot in the scheme of things because you live in two places, and how we have great health insurance. So in Congress, you can either get Obamacare.
Okay.
Or you pay for your insurance. Yeah. So you get a great package because you pay for it.
But you're right, it costs.
But you pay for it. And so people don't really know that.
Yeah. That makes sense. All right. So I think I told you. So the title of our podcast is Misfits Manifesto, right? I'm talking to as many people as possible because as much as we can cogitate around what's broken, what's wrong, who didn't, who did, I'm super enthusiastic about what the future looks like. And I don't think the future is a place. I think it's a series of iterations, right? And people who are engaged in creating the future are not afraid of it, right? So I'm people like yourself and others, I'm just asking some tough questions that we have to kind of think about relative to how do we see the world different? Like, what's the science fiction play, right? So I went to your website, of course, and I looked at all the things you said you want to focus on.
Yeah.
So I'm going to read them.
Okay.
And here's the question I'm going to ask after I read them.
Okay.
Where is the innovation? Meaning, I know these are long-standing things that people have been talking about for decades. You've got your heart wrapped around it. Where's the innovation? Where are the new ideas, the science fiction ideas relative to solving or adding value to these issues? So I'm just going to read everything I saw.
Okay.
Expanding voter rights, healthcare for all, reproductive justice, criminal justice reform, focus on diversion, redemption, and rehabilitation, job creation to create economic justice and opportunities for all communities, innovative investment in housing, a Green New Deal, and immediate climate action, increased spending on education and the arts. All sounds incredibly ambitious. Where's the new idea? What's the innovation? How are we going to shake up this system? Where's the disruption? Come on, let's get it going.
Shake it up.
Let's hear it. I'm excited.
Well, part of the shake up is telling the truth.
There we go.
And letting people know what it really is, right?
Yeah.
So you get into these places of power and you want to be all secretive. You don't want to expose.
Right.
So part of it's exposing.
Yeah.
And saying, I don't have all the answers. No one person has all the answers, right?
I love it.
The tribe helps come up with the answers based on what works for the tribe. In my space, the tribe is the constituency, but it's also humanity.
Sure.
I'm still trying to figure out an acronym, but there are 4 buckets: arts and culture, the environment, democracy, and economic justice. Economic justice is criminal justice, education, healthcare, generational wealth, reparations. The innovation is really going back to the future. I believe that problems are going to get solved in community.
Yeah.
That's where innovation is.
Yeah.
The side hustles that we're all doing, that's innovation.
Yeah.
And folks have like pop-ups for this 3 months and then another pop-up. It's failure and learning and then new successes.
I love it.
You know what I mean?
Experimentation.
Yes. And we have to have the government, Sydney, invest in those experimentations. And we have to say, it's okay for all of us to fail. Okay? So that's my innovation.
Yeah.
How do we invest? How do we turn consumers, Black folks, brown folks, into manufacturers, producers, distributors?
Yeah.
How do we redistribute the assets in our communities into ways that benefit and create wealth for more than just one person? It's why I was doing the urban farming. It's why I was so focused on housing and the faith-based community, community land trusts. It's why I care a lot about the arts, because I think arts and culture, a world without artists is not a world worth living. So I want us to invest.
Yeah.
Because, Pookie has got some smarts. Now, maybe his circumstances offer him limited options.
Sure.
But Pookie is good with math or good with organization or good with strategy.
Yeah.
How do we invest in that to give Pookie more options?
So what could that look like? So when you say that, what does that investment specifically look like? Is that in educational spaces? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, it's everything. It's community schools, right? How do you rebuild schools in your community so that you're not busing your kids someplace else and people that look like you are teaching you? How do you talk about green energy and technology in a way that people in Leimert Park, South LA, Inglewood, Compton, Watts understand? How do you not just show up with a check and say, okay, here's a one-time only handout, but you're figuring out how to invest in ways that will allow communities to develop and redistribute their own assets? How do you talk about how do we keep or reclaim our land? I'm very interested in land seizure because the government's been taking people's lands for a long time, not just Black folks, but white and poor folks.
Yeah.
Eminent domain and all kind of other things.
That's the history of America, right? It's how we got America was
tell me.
taking some land from some people.
Tell me.
But go ahead.
And it's the easiest, quickest way to harness wealth and asset.
Yeah.
So how do we undo some of that? And then how do we invest in experimentation, competitive grants? Can the government say, whoever can find a cure for cancer, I will give you $1 billion.
Right. Yes.
And just not pharma, no.
Yeah.
But you scientists, you HBCU med students, come up with a cure.
Yeah.
We can do that.
Yeah.
I would have conversations with my stepdad all the time, and he would say, we would talk, and you see these segments on the news, and the young white child is in the boat by herself going from Florida to South Africa, and then the boat sinks, and she gets some more money for another boat and tries it again. There's benefactors. That white girl had a dream, and somebody believed in her, and they funded that dream. And then when she failed, they gave her more money to try it again.
That's right.
Until she was able to make it real. We have to get in the habit of allowing ourselves to dream outside of the boxes people ask us to stay in. We have to be allowed to fail. We have to be allowed to have people come back and reinvest until we get it right. Right?
Yes.
That's what I want to do with government.
Yeah. I mean, the concept of iteration, like it takes a few times to get there. Yes. But here's the deal. Impoverished and or marginalized communities, because we don't have the safety net, a lot of times we are much more averse to trying and failing because we don't know if we can recover.
Right.
There's oftentimes not someone to come alongside and say, hey, good try, didn't work out. I'm going to help. I'm going to support and undergird. So absolutely having government Like invest in communities to allow them not to be great the first time. Right? It's like anything worth doing is worth doing bad at first.
Yes.
And give people a chance to iterate, and eventually we're going to get something of consequence. But oftentimes communities of colors, impoverished communities, whoever they might be, just don't have the backing or safety net to allow for them to dream, to jump, leap, and know that if they fall, it's not going to be fatal.
Right.
I
mean, that's what venture capitalists do.
Yes.
They scour the earth for these great ideas. They invest in them. Obviously, they want them to make money. They're getting shares or buying them. They fail, they go look for the next one. We can do that.
Yeah.
I mean, you can do that and say, hey, the government might get a 1% cut or whatever, but the goal is not so that you can recoup because they're taxpayer dollars.
Right.
But the goal is how do you create opportunities for self-determination to happen, right?
Yeah.
I don't want the legacy of my people to be one of victims.
Yeah.
Because Biddy Mason had an idea. Madam C.J. Walker had an idea. We got ideas up the wazoo.
That's right.
Right? So we can dream. We've been asked through generations to not dream as big as we can. And so I need government to unwind that very harmful narrative and get back into the business of investing. We did it with WPA. We did it with GIs when they came back from the war, right? We did it with women when the men were gone fighting. So we know how to do it. We did it with COVID.
Yep.
We did it with Tesla.
Yep. Well, yeah. Yes, absolutely. And one of the things that I'm often curious about, I feel like you talked about collaboration a moment ago. I'm always curious about how government specifically can foster environments like these, these spaces where innovators, market disruptors, influencer thinkers are coalescing around big ideas. Like when you said, hey, HBCU students, we got $1 billion, whoever has the answer. How do we create those pockets, the new Silicon Valley, where people are co-locating, and because of the energy and the synergy in that space, great ideas are emerging from that environment? Do you feel like there is a play for government to invest in spaces or invest in whether that's geographical spaces or even, facilities or in organizations where you build that coalition?
I think so. I'm now focused on the federal level. So when I hear your question, I think, yes, who is it Black Caucus with Hispanic Caucus that's pushing the president to say, you should be doing an executive order on this. You should be visiting this. You should be charging the CEOs of these 10 logistical companies to invest in X or Y. It's how do you move people like Marcia Fudge, who used to be in Congress and is now head of HUD, to say, hey, look at Los Angeles as the epicenter for housing opportunity, and how can we be bold through HUD to get money to this region to help us with housing. You work together with bipartisan folks if you can, maybe people in different regions, to say, how do we come together on this bold idea and then push it? It's not always going to be through legislation. Sometimes it's through the community earmarks. So everyone says, well, that's bad. No, it's not. Community earmarks is when you say, there's a great organization in my district. And they need help because they're trying to build a bridge, open up a school, feed 10,000 homeless people. They need some help, and big government doesn't see them. So little government, little district does. How do you use those dollars, right? And support ideas and inspiration happening in your district. If we're pushing all of those levers, I think things can get done.
Yeah. I almost wonder if there's even some benefit for government to offer subsidies or something to larger companies to incentivize them, to create these spaces.
We do that a lot, but we don't ask for a lot in return, right?
For innovation purposes?
Yeah.
Okay.
So government does work, tax incentives, you get tax credits, tax breaks. A lot of those are offered oftentimes through cities and states, but from the federal government too. Hey, relocate here. You don't have to pay any taxes. And so, okay, then we'll come and we'll put our headquarters here, because the notion is that if the business relocates, then you're going to get money through sales tax and people spending. But we can say you need to adopt a school. If you come up in here,
right,
you're responsible for helping this school go from a D to an A.
Absolutely.
We should be doing that.
Yes.
We should be saying, hey, FedEx, hey, UPS. Amazon, adopt the block.
Yep. Absolutely.
Everything on the block.
Yep.
There's some houses on the block. There's a school on the block. There's a church on the block.
Yeah.
If you want to come here. That's what we can do.
Yeah.
So, I've gone around and I've tried to tell people there's a different kind of empowerment zone or opportunity zone that I'm interested in. But you got employees in these big old companies. Get on out here.
That's right. Okay, so I want to just deviate because you brought up your stepfather.
Okay.
You sent me a picture. So I preached a sermon. You were in church.
Yeah.
And you said
many mansions.
Yes. So your stepfather's an incredible artist.
He is.
I have two more questions that are based on the podcast. We're gonna get back to it in just a second. But I want to just for a minute tell us about your stepdad and his art.
Okay. So Kerry James Marshall is my stepdad. Okay. He's the artist, yes. P. Diddy and Auction spent a lot of money to get his painting.
Don't say that's you gotta raise your voice a little bit.
Okay. $21 million.
Woo!
In Auction. The largest sale ever for any Black artist.
We need to stop. If I had the little some applause, I need some kind of. My producers, can you all clap over there, please? Can we just give some mad love to that? Is huge.
So it is huge. And then
was it the one that you sent me or a different one?
No, it was a different one. It was a different one. So then I was talking to Kerry about something, and he said, I guess he said he called P. Diddy about something had come up, and he said, "Yeah, I don't have no more money, man."
I'm broke now.
I know. But the story behind it was that Swiss Beats, who's married to Alicia Keys, is very interested in the arts and is trying to get Black wealthy people to purchase at auction the Black paintings by Black people, so that to keep it in the family.
Yeah.
And this had come up on the auction block, and it was important, he thought, for this to go to a Black person. And I guess I could be getting it wrong. I think he outbid Eli Broad or something.
Wow.
So, I want to say when Kerry met my mom, he was at the Studio Museum in Harlem. None of us didn't have no money. That was the beans part of the story.
The bean season. Yeah. We're going to call that the bean season.
The bean season, that's right. But they've been together for almost, 30 years. And it's a love. It's a Black love that is so rich and honest and has been helpful in guiding me to be a better Black woman and wife and mother. Yeah. But he's so unapologetic. So his work is Black people. It is a Black color. It is not a brown shade or nothing. And everyone is beautiful. And so they're images of Black love and men twirling their Black girls around. They're images of daily life, where you're on a lake fishing. There's a lot of subversive imagery in this that relates to gun violence and death and lynching and our past, but it's always rooted in just the everyday life of Black people and the beauty, the true beauty and resilience and colorfulness of us. So he's my stepdad.
I love it.
And I don't really talk about him a lot. This is probably the most I've ever talked about him.
Come on, one more time, producers. Let's give some love for this. I feel so honored. So now you said something about this kind of maybe being developmental for you as a wife. So I told you a story that I knew your husband before I knew you and had no idea you all were married. Yeah. And so I will not name the department, but I met your husband in a meeting with a police department.
Yeah.
That did not go well.
Dun dun.
It was pastors and it was, captains from this department, and it was right after George Floyd, and then some other things that happened recently. And so, everyone was having these meetings and these kumbayas, and departments were kind of expressing what they were doing. So we sat there for a while. We listened to this very, very long, and they brought up all these people and diverse folk. You know how they,
I know.
And I mean, no disrespect. I love law enforcement as it serves well. And so this is not to bash anybody or anything.
But however, they do a dog and pony. They're like, all we doing?
Yeah, you know how it goes.
I know. And then they use up all the time, and you ain't got no time to ask no questions.
And at the end, we were allowed to speak. So your husband and his partner, and their law firm is called?
It's Justice X, but it's the Dove Law Corp. Yeah.
Okay, so they were there with us. And so they began to speak. And here's what the premise was simply this. With their work for justice and recourse relative to misappropriate or inappropriate actions of officers, they were advocating that more good officers would just come forward. But we know that you all oftentimes are fearful of retribution, and that's why it doesn't happen. And so they were just there and that. And when I tell you that meeting blew up, I'm talking about it. One of the officers stood up. Nobody had been standing up the whole time. One officer jumped up and he started just going off about what we didn't know and how, and if you want to experience community with officers, come down and bring pizza to the officers. And he named some person. It was wild.
Yeah.
I had to get to a meeting, so I had to say my piece before I left.
Yeah.
So I commented, of course, thank your husband for being there, and talked about this is part of the reason for some of the breakdowns when there's not the empathy needed to listen. We listened for about 45 minutes, but your husband is cooler than a polar bear's toenail. This man sat there. He's the most composed man I've ever met in my life. And he sat there and he just kind of went through a smile on his face the whole time, undeterred, unmoved. And so I had a deep affinity for him, his work, and the way in which he carried it out. It wasn't aggressive. It wasn't abusive or abrasive, but it was hardline truth. So then I meet you, and then you're amazing, and then we get on a call together, and I'm like, oh, you all are connected.
Yeah.
Tell me about, just a little bit about that. I know I'm taking up all of your time, but tell me about your husband just a little bit more. And about your relationship. And you're for those who are listening at home or in the car, she is smiling from ear to ear. I see butterflies and hearts coming out of her eyes.
Yes.
Yeah, this is great.
So I tell people, I've told all my staff, whenever I've gone to a new office, I say my number one priority is to stay married.
Amen.
So they say, what bills? What's your priority? My number one priority is Austin Dove.
There you go.
Been married for 7 years. We met, on a dairy farm doing a regional delegation seminar.
What?
I know. And we met in Bakersfield on a dairy farm. I know. It was the third trip in a 5-leg trip across the state to look at regional economies.
Oh.
And so the first trip, I was under the weather, and he said I was salty to him. He said hi. He's like, I was like, give me a refund. You people are whack. Then the second trip, I was not there because I had to work. And then the third trip was Bakersfield. And so we kind of hit it off. I was like, why are you trying to hang out with me, man? I don't got no time for you. And then I was like, I'm laughing over here with these other people. And so, but then we hit it off and we stayed connected and we formed a friendship and then fell in love. And I have 3 stepkids. He's got 3 children. And so, both divorced. I'd been married before. And so my stepdad, came into my mother's life when I was young and married, and she was divorced. She had a child, and he, didn't have kids. And so he kind of came into this.
Okay.
And he became my confidant when I was younger, Carrie. I would ask him about relationship issues, and he is very honest. So I was like, well, okay, that's a little sugar with that man. But I saw how they worked, and they were honest, and they loved each other, and they struggled and embraced, and they let each other be themselves. And I used that in my relationship with Austin. What it meant to be a stepmother. You know, how do you build relationships with kids, recognizing they have another parent in their world too? And how do you just try to be someone's friend and encourage a child to be their best selves?
Yeah.
And then how do you love a Black man who does this kind of work where they just see so much trauma? I mean, he comes home and he shares stuff with me. It breaks my heart.
Yeah.
You hear about, you know, young men being raped in prison. You hear about just all the circumstances that got them there, people getting out or getting a deal and then just going back for really stupid stuff and struggling to the gratefulness around getting someone out, the family that's in disarray when they go away, how they're abused by the system, by the courts, by the police, how poverty, I mean, seeing nephews shot in the living room and then the police don't show up for 9 hours and you walking around somebody dead. And that's a lot to carry.
Yeah.
So I also kind of learned also through my stepdad and my mom, like how to love someone who's a warrior for our people.
Yeah.
Worrying to be a good father.
Yeah.
Right? A good man. Also unapologetically Black, right? And then how do you support him?
Yeah.
So it's been fun. I mean, I learned a lot of stuff that I never thought I was going to have to learn. But there's so much joy, I think, that comes from when you know God has sent you to someone to join them in this journey called life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I felt it in my heart. Just, that was so good.
Well,
you should write a book about your love.
I know. Well, you should also say, I mean, you and we all talked because we asked you to pray for us before the swearing in.
Yeah.
And I believe you felt the importance of that and why it was so necessary for us to hear you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, for what it's worth, being able to like deeply appreciate the reverence in which you hold what you're called to do and the tension that comes with making sure that you're doing it in an honorable way and that you're honoring your family and that you're executing your duties in a way that does not dismiss or in some way cause you to be derelict when it comes to those that you love. And like, so that was impactful for me.
Yeah.
Because you don't see that on C-SPAN, you know?
No, you don't.
From people typically.
No.
And having a chance to really peer into, like, you mean this.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, you know, I was giving side eye on C-SPAN because I was like, you come over here with that fight, I got something for you. And, you know, craziness. We were going to the floor and we got on the elevator and it was like all these Southern white men from I don't know what states, and they were talking and they didn't even see us. But they had such intense accents. And we kind of looked at each other and Austin was like, he said, I got a tick in my eye because it took us back to like Jim Crow. And he's like, is this who you're dealing with?
Wow.
So you're in that you're in these spaces with people who are very nice. I met Republicans. They're like, hello, ma'am. Oh, it's so nice to meet you, ma'am.
I love it.
Oh, excuse me. Did I don't want to offend you. And then you're like, okay. And then you hear them say stuff on the floor and you're like, But so then you say, I need the shield on me.
Sure.
But then you also need to remind yourself that this is not real. The man at home in L.A. who's picking up your son because you're in D.C. And trying to get him to basketball and hopefully is heating up the soup you made before you left.
And not burning the beans.
Yep. That's why you're doing it.
Yes. You're going to make me ask a lot more questions, but I'm going to keep moving because we can go down this path. All right, so I have two more. Now, here's the next one. So we're seeing some incredible people on both sides of the house, you know, in all spheres and levels of government, starting to gracefully consider that it's time for them to move on.
Yes.
Right? So we're seeing that. This seemed like a decade of transition.
Yes.
With that being the case, you being one of them, who else are you keeping your eye on as like some exciting people that will receive the baton as those who are going on in that transition?
I mean, so I'm excited about the crop of folks that I'm in Congress with right now. This young brother, Maxwell Frost out of Florida.
Okay.
He's caught the eye of everyone in America because he's a Gen Z. But he's so down to earth. He's an old soul. So I'm hoping that there are more Maxwells around. We have a young brother, I don't want to, I hate to call people's names out, but I will. Young Eddie Anderson with McCarty Memorial is doing it. And so, we hope that he finds a space to run. There are folks that I think are here in LA that do really great work, and they're probably making more money than they would be making if they were running for office.
Gotcha.
But the connection you have, your ability to be honest in a way that allows people to receive you, that's who we need running.
Yeah.
We don't need every kind of problem solver, self-funded, wabdy-wabdy. You need people who are relatable and honest.
Yeah.
I trust when you tell me there's no money, there's no money. I trust when you tell me I have to fill out this application, that something will happen. I trust when you say you'll call me, you'll call me. I think we've gotten to the point where that's what people want.
Yep, that's right.
That's what we have to do.
Yeah, I love it. So Eddie Anderson.
Geremy Dixon, maybe?
I don't know if I'm going to run for office, but I'm definitely... Okay, producer. All right, I'll take that, producer. Thank you so much. All right. Not to mention,
But you could be on a commission. You could run for like a water board. You could try to
Okay.
get appointed for something. I mean, there's all kind of things.
Well, I got to end with the congressperson.
You do.
So, I mean,
You should call her. You should holla.
I'm going to do the best I can. Okay, so here's my final question.
Okay.
So Misfit Manifesto, once again, is calling our shot, believing that there's some innovative ways in which we can change culture, disrupt what's happening, and do something great. There's a Sergey Brin quote that I love to quote. I quote everywhere I go, and he says, if what you're doing doesn't sound to some as science fiction, it's not transformative enough. So here's my question to you, Congresswoman Sydney Kamlager. My question is, what's the thing that sounds foolish until it happens? What do you see? What's the science fiction thing you see? Like, call your shot. Next 5 years, 10 years, when it comes to the work that you're going to do, what is that thing or those things? What are the innovations that you feel like you're going to give your life to? And it may seem a little crazy, but you're going to give your all to see if those things can come to reality.
So it's so funny. I read that quote, and my counter to it, I think, is from Wu-Tang Clan.
Let's go.
That said, if you're not living on the margins, you're taking up too much space.
Time out. Round of applause for Wu-Tang Clan. Let's give it up for Wu-Tang Clan. Let's go. Taking up too much space. That's good.
So somebody got married, and that was the quote in the paper, like the New York Times wedding section. I was like, hey now. So
I love
my folks have that on their wall.
Nice.
I'm really invested in, so my bold ideas are creating generational wealth. I do want to repatriate the land and wealth that has been stolen from all of us back to us. I do want to create urban farms in districts like mine where it's really about how we find new economic engines. And I want that to be the genesis for how in our communities we're creating green energy. In our communities, we're able to light and power and grow them quasi-independently. I mean, not everyone off the grid, but in a way that allows us to recoup that wealth. I think of Black Wall Street, Tulsa, Oklahoma, places where it was rich and vibrant. I want to create that everywhere across this country. I want us to stop wasting or consuming. I would love for us to just kind of halt production and just figure out how to reuse and recycle all of the textiles, the fabrics, the resources that we have so that we can figure out a way to kind of heal and calm and cool Mother Earth. I want to boldly reinvest in arts and have a WPA program, kind of 3.0, where we're solidly investing in arts and education and connecting those things. So when I was running for Congress, we visited a whole bunch of churches, amazed at the young people behind all this technology, doing things.
Yep.
And it's like, I want to be a part of that, and I want the government to be part of that. My husband's nephew does the Ebony Beach Club, right? On Dockweiler, and there's Summer and Wawa, and then there's Black Market Flea, and like, that's what I want to see. Examples of entrepreneurship, community, collectivity, joy. So I want social housing. It's not public housing, but I want people to be able to own the spaces that we're creating, like rentals and homes. We're redesigning how people are living, but we're giving them options and autonomy in the ways that they want to live. A bold thing is elders growing old in dignity and not having to be impoverished in order to get substandard help, where we're also just beating down the caregivers that are taking care of them. It's like basic humanity. Was that bold enough?
That's bold.
Okay.
That's bold. And ladies and gentlemen, come on, give me a round of applause. Come on, that's bold. Can I get some love?
I mean,
my goodness.
It's not living on Mars or Saturn, but but what sometimes you said in some contexts can feel like that. Repatriating, returning land, right? That's huge. And people don't want to give it up. People don't. And then there was a study that came out that said the IRS over audits Black communities and poor communities more often than anyone else. There's a little county in Mississippi that's audited. The people are audited more than anyone else because they get EITC, earned income tax credit. So, stop that BS.
Yep.
Right? There's another study that came out that said all these pension funds, trillions of dollars, pension funds in our state, pensions run by the federal government, mostly managed by white folks, not Black firms. So there's simple things. Because what if just 1%, 3% of that came to these communities that we talk about? That we come from.
I love it. I love you. I can't tell you how much I appreciate this. This has been great, informative. I'm inspired. I'm inspired. This is kind of like my first time hearing the speech in person. The thing.
Oh yeah.
So kind of, I'm on the team. I'm with it. I'm absolutely with it. And I'll be paying attention too.
You will be. I know. You'll be texting me.
And I'm going to send you snippets of this.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to say, don't forget you said we was
I know.
I'm going to be right there with you.
I can't. Okay.
And I'm going to be supporting too.
Okay. I guess I can't lie to you. I mean, you're fast after all.
I mean, I'll be lying to me.
You put the lightning on me. Booza, booza.
If you have a lot of sound effects, I just want to say that. The wada, the booza, booza, we need to just capture those when I have other guests. I can hit the button with your sound effects.
Okay.
I appreciate you.
Okay.
I'll give you credit the first time.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I don't even need the credit.
Oh, see, you're so selfless.
I don't even need the credit.
A humble servant.
I try to be.
The heart of God.
I try to be. Oh.
Look at there. Look at there. Congresswoman Sydney Kamlager, thank you so very much.
Thank you for having me. This was a treat.
Super cool. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Misfit Manifesto. I trust this has been as, impactful for you as it has been for me. Now, what makes these type of moments in this community special is when you're a part of it. So I want to encourage you to go to misfitmanifesto.com, join the conversation, and join the community. I believe something is on the horizon, but I don't want to do it alone. I want to do it with you. So come be a part, and let's see some amazing things happen.